Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Psychic Perspectives. I am Carol with my beautiful, lovely co-host, Sarah.
Hello.
And today we are going to, it was actually Sarah's idea to talk about the clairs.
Yes.
And of course, at first I said, oh my gosh, really? There's so many videos already out there that talk about it, but we wanted to give you our perspectives on it and we want to talk about it. And then I realized, gosh, what a great idea. So
Yeah.
why did you feel like we should do it as a, because again, there's so many out there. So what did you think that we were going to bring to the table that would maybe be different than other people's videos?
Right. Well, first of all, I have a bad habit of assuming that people just kind of know like what we're talking about or they should know what I'm talking about because I know it. So you should know it too.
Right.
And I think it's important to describe what we call the clairs because it is this like sixth sense, even though it applies to like the overall senses. Describing what those are and how they feel is a big and huge part of how you helped me in my process and growth of, understanding mediumship and psychic development. So it's like, if you don't understand how these things or this information is coming to you and what it feels like, chances are you could be, just shoving it off and you're not really, not embracing your gifts because everyone has a particular, clair, right? Or even a couple different ones. That they are more apt
they're dominant ones. They're dominant.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to talk about it, even if everybody else talks about it, because it's important to know.
Right. Well, and you're right, in this way people kind of get our perspective on it and our take and what they mean. And, obviously it may resonate with some people. So we'll try to be thorough about that. Well, for people who don't know, I mean, we've been talking about the clairs because I have some people that watch the videos and go, I don't know what you're talking about. So you raised a really good point. It's like, maybe we need to get a little more break it down a little bit more. And so the clairs are basically the psychic senses, right? That's the way that we receive psychic information. And I think it's kind of interesting that really only the psychic community uses those terms because you hear me talk about parapsychology all the time. They acknowledge the clairs, but they really don't get into them too much unless you're actually doing like a psychic development class. I mean, they're very aware that we see things and hear things, and that's what we're referring to when we talk about the clairs. And of course, clair is French for meaning clear. And then whatever follows that means clear. So for example, if it's clairvoyance, it's clear seeing, right? Or clairaudience, which is clear hearing. So there's actually 6 clairs altogether. So which one's your favorite? I think it's clairvoyance for you, right? Which is the clear seeing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a dominant. It's a dominant.
It is for you, not for me.
Right. No, I see stuff. So yeah.
And then there's the clairaudience, which is clear hearing, right?
Right.
And then that's my dominant, I think.
I agree with that 100%.
The clairsentience is the next one. That's a really, really huge one. And I think that's going to be a big topic when we talk about clairsentience, which is clear feeling, because that's such a huge category. I have a lot of comments about clear feeling.
Right.
And especially, I'm surprised you don't identify with that because empaths are constantly saying, I take on the emotions of others. I take on their feelings. I take on their illnesses. That's clear feeling, right? That's that clairsentience. So, I mean, that's a pretty strong one for you as well, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess I didn't, I forgot that was
part of it. I'm surprised you didn't say clairsentience was your dominant one.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I always just identify with the empathic part as like its own thing, I guess.
But it's being,
but it's not.
But see, yeah, it's because it can be perceived either mentally or through feelings. I think it depends on how you perceive it. So the clairsentience is a big one we'll talk about, which is again the clear feeling, which I think is just a crazy big terminology. Then we have claircognizance, right? Which is the clear knowing.
Right.
That one's really tough to identify, and we'll talk about that when we get to that one. And then there's the last two, which is the clairalience and the clairgustance. And of course, the clairalience is the smelling, and then the gustance is the tasting. So
So it's like the senses, but psychic,
They
you
are.
know?
They're really the same senses that we really already have, and that's why we're going to break them down just a little bit more. So, which one do you want to delve into first? Because that's basically the rough outline of what they are, but we want to kind of break those down. And did you want to talk about clairvoyance first?
Yeah, actually, that because that's kind of the one that I picked up on first to talk
Okay.
about. I'm not sure how long this video is going to go, just because there's so many, and I did want to talk about a little bit of like what the experiences are that we've had with it, so that people can relate. Um, so just in my mind, clairvoyance is just seeing the clear pictures. It's getting the visual in your mind, and that can and I wrote down about it's like your third eye and the dream state, I think, really kind of correlate with how you will receive this clairvoyance, or how well, I think, or maybe how strong, I guess, the ability is. So, for example, if you have really vivid and clear dreams,
Oh, I
chances
see what you're
are
saying. Okay.
you are very clairvoyant, and maybe you don't realize it. Um, if you are constantly daydreaming and seeing pictures and like little movies in your head,
Great
that's
example.
clairvoyance
Right.
for
Great
sure.
example.
And so I think a lot of people just like chalk it up to, this is my imagination. I'm just visualizing this as an imaginary scenario. But I think the important thing to note is the feelings behind it, and the, I guess, correlation to how you're getting the information. Um, so, but just to break it down, clairvoyance is seeing pictures,
Right.
whether or not they're moving or still, because some people will see it like a movie, and some people will see, maybe just like a symbol,
Well,
or
that's a really great point. I didn't realize that because I don't
yeah.
have a lot of clairvoyance. I really don't see anything in moving pictures. If I have any clairvoyance whatsoever, it's a still picture. So that's a really interesting point that you see it actually in motion, almost like
Yes.
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I did put down it is internal images in our mind. And I also put colors, shapes, objects, people, places. Well, I did put static or unfolding events and scenes, which is
See,
basic. Yeah.
that's
So
yeah.
I did kind of include that, but I guess I saw it unfolding in a static way, not actually in the term of a movie.
Mhm.
So, well, when you were talking about the dream state, did you feel like dream state correlated to clairvoyance, or were you just using that as a comparison for the visuals in a dream are similar to the clairvoyant state?
Well, kind of both,
Okay.
because I feel like when some people describe to me what their dreams are, and they're super detailed, and I think there's a level of awareness in the dream that will depend on whether or not this is like you're receiving the psychic information as like and dreams are weird, because I think that you can receive some information um as like, I guess it's like you're going out to get it kind of thing with your guides, like, like like a question, right? Like I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do in the dream state, but I think that the information that you receive during that time, and your overall like awareness about it, and then how you process it, that can really start to overlap into your waking state and the psychic information that you get
Okay.
just during the day. So, because a lot of it, that's how it unfolded for me, was, I was having these really vivid dreams, and not all of them are like, oh, I was having some kind of precognitive dream where I'm predicting the future or something like that. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like that. It's like, this is reflection of what your current emotional state is, or your current issues are, and when you go back and you look at them and you analyze them in a certain way, you're like, oh, this is what the dream was trying to tell me. So it's like all of them are important, and I think when you start to realize how you get that information, when you're in your waking state, for example, and you start to get the same kind of information, or let's say like you start to go back into that dream, for example, you can pick up more information off of it just by going back to those visualizations. So I feel like clairvoyance and how much information you get in your dream state correlate. Whether or not that's actually true, I don't know, but it did for me. And that was how in my experience, it unfolded. A lot of it started off in the dream state. I was like even conversing with dead people in my dream state. So
no, that's a very common phenomenon. So that's a great point that you make. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that kind of opened the door. And when you start to journal them, and like I said, really kind of try to understand what the importance is behind that information, you start to unlock little, keys and doors into your brain, and boom, you just start to expand on these things. So clairvoyance, I think, was I didn't know or think that would have been my dominant ability, but looking back in hindsight, I do think that that's how it all started, and it unlocked a lot of these other things like clairaudience. And then,
well, they do when you find your dominant one, and that was something I was going to bring up later. You're right. When
right.
you find your dominant one and you work with that, that's when the others start expanding, because you kind of have that aha moment. So right. The clairvoyance, again, internal images, right, which you feel are very much enhanced, or I think you're kind of, if what I'm hearing you, it's a key indicator is if you have very vivid dreams. Now, the interesting thing is I have pretty vivid dreams. I actually have a lot of dream recall. I'm very aware of things. But that does not translate for me into images during the day. I will have insights and awareness from them, which I think is just, I think for me, it's kind of internal processing, but they've never translated over into daily life. As far as the visuals are concerned. So again, I'm not saying that that's not a true statement. I think you just kind of want to look at that though and say, gee, I'm having all these visuals at night, like you're saying, and then now I'm having them during the day. Maybe pay attention to that, because it may be right. A communication system for you. The other thing about, instead of just being internal images or pictures, because again, mine are more like photographs than movies, if I do get them, or it'll just be like a black and white image. It'll be very flat. It's just not very visually detailed at all.
Right.
Which is fine. But then there's also what I think too, sometimes people have external visuals. So for example, they think they're seeing them with their eyes, but there's still a psychic perception. So for example, people who see auras, everyone's not seeing that, only you're seeing it. You're perceiving it with your eyes, right? In this, not your mind's eye. You may say, no, I literally see that around that person, but no one else does. That is still a clairvoyant experience. You are still using a visual psychic experience.
That's so crazy, because I actually had like one of my first psychic experiences was seeing someone's aura, and I never knew that was a thing until they were like, oh, you need to try, because I think that this is your thing. And I was like,
it's still clairvoyance. It's just, instead of happening in here, it's happening out here. So you're literally using your eyes. Whereas with the other form of the internal clairvoyance, if you were blind, you could still have internal clairvoyance.
Right.
Whereas, and I don't want to say if you were blind, you couldn't, because we do know that people who are blind can actually be trained to see even without their eyes, which is really crazy. But there's more and more studies coming out from that. But I also have a friend who sees a lot of colors. She sees them in the environment around her. No one else sees them. So they're very subjective experiences, right? It's like only you see them. That's still a clairvoyant experience. So another one is waves of energy. People say, I can see the energy coming off that person, or I can see the energy that is being emitted. Also clairvoyance, but these are happening external. So we have internal clairvoyance and external clairvoyance. So I did want to clarify that, because both are psychic forms of receiving information. Right.
Yeah, no, that's good. I actually didn't put that together as far as the auras and the clairvoyance. So very nice.
Very true. Yeah. So what do you think the benefits of clairvoyance are, or is there a benefit to it? Because I think every clair has a benefit and a drawback, and I kind of wanted to talk briefly about those. So since you're clairvoyant and I'm not, I mean, what stands out for you? And I made some notes here as far as Pluses and minuses,
Well,
if
for one
any.
thing, I mean, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So when you get a picture, there's a lot of information packed into that picture.
That was my very first benefit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's important to it's just important to not discount it really, and be like, and try to absorb all of that information into that picture, if that's like all the information that you're getting, because you know, you would have to basically figure out, well, what is the message then behind just the picture? So usually I think the other thing about it is like, you know, a picture being worth 1,000 words is one thing, but it also is usually coupled with something. So, you know, like
Good
an
point.
emotion or a feeling or something a little bit added that gives you this like message that you can deliver. Oh, I'm seeing this picture with this kind of vibe going on.
Right.
And this is what the message is.
Completely. Yeah. Yeah. I had an example of, I want you to imagine taking a look at a picture that you took of a party or a family trip or some big event. And when you look at that picture, not only you're not just seeing what's in the picture, it's bringing up all of these memories, right? It's bringing up all of the thoughts and the emotions, and whether you were happy or whether you were mad because, oh, mom was doing this at the time, but over here, dad was making a joke. And so all of that stuff comes with it. So I think that's really what is a good example of when you're talking about when you get a clairvoyant image in your head, don't just go, oh, that's really weird. A teddy bear just flashed in front of my eyes. Okay, but it was a teddy bear. It was brown. And it had a pink bow. And I felt like it was given to me on my birthday. And it's like, stay with the image.
Right.
What are the emotions that it brings up? So that single image, if you dismiss it, you're missing the psychic impact that it has. And I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Is that it's densely packed. So I always encourage people, and I think I did this for you as well, stick with the image. Don't let it go. Right. Okay. You noticed it. Whoop. Oh, wait, there it went. Bring it back. Hang on to it like you would an image of a photograph. And
that's the endurance that you're talking about when you are staying with that energy. So you get the picture and then you like, okay, this is the information.
And that can feed you, right? That feeds you, that starts giving you that other stuff. And I think the thing that's really good, especially if like you're doing psychic detective work and like you see something into visual, stick with it. Same thing there. Oh, okay, there's a hairbrush and it belonged to, the victim, right? So stick with that image, stick with that visual or a crime scene or a room or a photo, and then let it start building. So it's not just the clairvoyance, like you said, that leads to that other information. Very good point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, usually you get a couple different things at one time, and I'm not sure if we always realize that, but it's usually like a picture coupled with a feeling with like a word, you know, you'll get a couple different things. And then you're right. It's important to stay with maybe just the initial picture. That way you're continuing to expand on what information is being offered. So,
and you raise a really good point. And I think that's true with all of the clairs, because like right now, I'm sitting in the room, I'm feeling, I'm hearing, I'm seeing. We're always using all of our senses at the same time. And that's true when we're perceiving the physical environment or our psychic senses. So everybody says, well, I don't want to put them in a box and tear them apart. You're right. You don't need to, because they do work hand in hand. But if you're all over the place and you don't know, should I be looking, listening, hearing, it's about paying attention to your dominant one. If the visual comes in, then grab onto it, stick with it, and then kind of see what else you're perceiving. So it's, I get that. Very true. Very true. So are there any drawbacks to clairvoyance? I know that I had a couple. I mean, does anything come to mind for you?
I mean, I guess it's just when they're super confusing and, you know, you're like, I'm not really sure what that is, you know,
I just, how do I interpret that? Right.
Yeah. And I think that can be the problem. Or when they're kind of vague, because like you said, you can get colors, symbols, numbers, like you get like just the number flash.
And that's when you have to use your other clairs to go, okay, I'm
Yeah.
just seeing the number 4, but you don't know what that
Right.
means. So you have to ask the question, what does that 4 mean to you? Because you may
Right.
not get another clairvoyant image to tell you. You may get that in the term of clairaudience or clairsentience, what the number 4 means.
Right. Right. Or for example, like you might get an image of a rose. Like, well, what does that mean?
Great example, right?
Well, what does a rose mean to you? How is it symbolic in meaning? And
That's
so
right.
then that's where you would kind of go with that information. So I guess,
Well, and
yeah,
that was a drawback that I put down, is that they can be very simple, but they can also be very symbolic. And the problem
right,
is what a rose means to you, means to me, means to someone else, could all be different because our psychic library, even our personal library, right, is just different. For me, a rose might be love. For another person, it might be a birthday. For another person,
right.
it could mean a
But
death.
but you can't discount it. And this is why we have to get out of our own way when it comes to interpretation. So there's, because it's right brain, left brain, and one of them is getting, the information and the other one is trying to decipher what that means. It is not your job as the psychic medium to decipher what that means. It is the sitter's job to decipher what that information means.
That's true.
So you can just say, well, I'm seeing a rose. I know what it means to me, but what does that mean to you? And if that is significant and it has meaning, oh yes, well, my mother just loves roses, or she had a huge rose garden, or whatever it is, if it resonates, it will resonate, and they will understand what the meaning is more so than you will as the psychic. So
yep.
that
No. Very well said. Perfect. Because you're right. I do know what it means to me. And that's the thing. It's like, oh, I've learned that this is a symbol, though. It's not to say that it doesn't have a different interpretation for the sitter, but I've also learned that there are some symbols that when I see this is a signal for me that this means this. And the funny thing was, I used to ask people, it's like, did your mom sew? And I hated that because I felt like it was very generic. Or I kept getting trains, right? So sewing to me, every time I'd see I sewing, it meant that they needed to make an amends or they needed to repair something. It took me forever to figure that out because I thought,
right.
why am I wanting to do that? Now, could it have been significant to the sitter? Probably. But after I got so many no's, but then I realized the context of the reading. That's when I started putting it together. Okay, this is a sign for me that says this person is here to make a repair.
So you can do that with your guides, which is actually one thing that you helped me with, which was kind of decide what those signs will be with your guides. So for example, if I see well, I don't know, what is a good example? Now I'm like trying to think about it. Well, just like what you said, the sewing, that to you means I'm needing to mend a relationship, or that the relationship itself needs to be mended. That's, that from your guides. So every time you see that sewing machine, you can say, well, I'm seeing a sewing machine and this is what it means to me.
Right.
The sitter might also have additional meaning for you, maybe not. It could. So it's important, I think, to still deliver that information and
you are right.
how you received it. Oh, absolutely. I see a sewing machine. This is what it means to me. Did that have any significance to you? And if it did, then excellent. If not, then the mending part should resonate, because then that's why you got it. So
that's perfectly said. I agree with you. You summed it up perfectly. Yeah.
Right. So okay. Well, there's that.
Well, no, you're right, because it's like, it's not our job to interpret, but there are times when you're going to see things visually that are symbolic. And if you say, I see a rose, and it doesn't mean anything to the sitter, but then you see a rose every time you're working with someone, what does that mean to you? You need to read into that. What does that feel like? And that takes time. That's where the developmental process comes. So don't just go, oh, well, the rose doesn't mean anything, and I keep seeing it. I kept getting sewing, sitting after sitting after sitting. And I said, okay, what's the theme here, right?
Yeah.
What does this matter? And that's when I tried to figure that out. I also get trains a lot. Trains tell me, which is really weird, right? It's like I hear a train and it feels like, okay, this is going to go by really fast. And this is how things are going to happen. It's
Right.
symbolic for me. And 9 times out of 10 means nothing to my sitter. So I
Okay.
think that's the point of clairvoyance, is it can have symbolism. That's a drawback in the sense that until you figure out your symbology,
Right.
you may stumble a little bit, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did take a class with one individual, and I won't name that person, but you and I are, know him. And one of the things that he recommended is building your own symbolic imagery for yourself, because you can train your brain. When I see a gun, that's going to tell me perhaps that this person passed from a murder, right?
Right.
Or if I see a car hitting a telephone pole, that is a symbol for me. You can assign symbology, right? You can train yourself if you want to do that. This means this to me. And I'm going to use that in the example in the sense that I have a book back here, which is Spirit Animal Guides. Mm-hmm. That is my go-to book for animals. So I and my spiritual team know that's my book, right? Because you'll pick up 20 books that have animal terms and everything, and they're all different. But that's the one I use. That will be my go-to. So my spiritual team knows that if they want to get a message to me across that's relating to animals, that's the book that I will use. Ergo, they need to give me the animal that correlates to the information that's in that book.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, that will work. So you can even set up your symbology to be your favorite deck or a favorite book, or, movies that matter to you. It's
right.
You can kind of work with that, if that makes, I don't know, did I explain that right?
Yeah.
It's like, you did. I chose the book, right? Because that's the one I'm going to use as my reference. And then they can use that as kind of a guide point. So that's what I'm saying. You can assign your clairvoyant symbols. That's what I was trying to get at with that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I wasn't ever really good at that. It's like, so certain things that I get, I do have to.
It works for some people and not for others. You're right. Sometimes
I wasn't as disciplined in the memorization of, these are my symbols that I want you to use, and this is when I want you to do it, or whatever. So my guides are kind of like, we're just going to throw it all at you at once.
And that's the way it was for me as well. But I do want to point out to people, it's okay if you want to be that person who's very structured and you want to assign symbols that mean something for you. You just need to be sure that when you see that, that has that relevance to you, right?
Exactly.
I mean, if I showed you a baby rattle with a pink ribbon, most of us know what that references, right?
Right.
It's a girl baby. You can feel that in your body. That can be your assigned visual. But if, for example, for you, it's the teddy bear with a pink ribbon, maybe that's your visual for a girl baby. It may not even be a baby. That's all I'm trying to say, right? But that symbology can be part of the drawback. Yeah. And it does require that personal interpretation. I think the only other drawback too is sometimes visual perceptions can be frightening or disturbing for people, right? So I had a friend who was starting to see apparitions. She's the only one that's seeing them. So it is a clairvoyant experience. She's literally seeing them while she's driving, walking down the road, then they're not there, sitting at the table, then they're not there. So she was having these clairvoyant experiences where they appeared to be, they were external, not internal. External clairvoyant experience.
No, that can be really freaky. Really, really freaky.
So I have a friend can be a drawback in the sense that they cause people to go, and then they shut down or they move into a state of fear because they don't really realize that they're simply having a clairvoyant experience, or they're using their clairvoyance and they're having a psychic experience.
Right.
And so how do you then handle that or interpret it? So I think that's the point of also just making people being aware it's just a clairvoyant experience. It appears to be happening around you. You're the only one who's probably seeing it.
Yeah.
Right. Unless it's a haunting situation where everybody is able to have it because it's more objective. It tends to be personal. So try not to react to it from that frightening type of perspective.
Right. Yeah. My friend, she sees things all the time.
Mhm.
And so she's constantly like asking like her daughter, did you see that person too? So yeah, it's pretty funny. I mean, she can handle it because she's, you know, developed enough to handle it. But I think if you aren't, that can be a really frightening experience if you
That's right.
don't know, you
Especially
know,
if it's
what's happening.
external, because you
Yeah,
feel like
yeah,
it's happening in the environment. And so you feel like, oh gosh, I'm haunted, or there's a demon in my house, or I hate to use that word, you know that, but it's like, you know,
yeah.
maybe you just saw a shadow, but it's a clairvoyant experience and you're the only one having that experience. So it's very
Right.
personal, it is psychic. So that is still clairvoyance. But I do believe that that can be a drawback for some people,
Yeah,
unless they
especially if you're
understand
not
that.
prepared for it. I
Right.
mean, I
Absolutely.
don't regularly see just, you know, dead people walking around. So, but I also don't ask for that either. It's like I don't really
Well,
want to.
clairvoyance is not a thing for me, but if you're finding that you're constantly seeing things in your environment, and again, there are very rational explanations for seeing certain things, right?
Right.
So I want to be careful there and say not every visual distortion is a clairvoyant experience. But if you're seeing light, or if you're seeing energy waves, or if you're seeing shadows, and they happen to be anywhere you go, right?
Right.
Or, you know, can you find some of those parallels? Just kind of take a look at that, and you may have some clairvoyance there going on that needs to just be examined a little bit more.
Right. Especially auras, because I didn't correlate that together, but
Well, because some people see the aura internally. To them it's a more of a, this is how they view it. It's they see it in their mind's eye, again, as opposed to physically seeing it on people. But
right,
there are
right.
plenty of people who do see it physically as well, so it depends on how you're
Yeah, I
viewing.
remember actually that time in Zumba class when I was like, look, and I it was just green. Like all I could see was like this haze of green around um one of our friends that was just standing in front of us, and I it was like I couldn't stop looking
Couldn't
at
stop
it, like,
looking at it. Yeah.
and I couldn't understand why is it that I'm only seeing her aura, and and I couldn't not see it, and I didn't ask to see it, so I'm like, I don't know, it's weird, but that's what happens. So
It's an
if that
external
happens,
clairvoyant perception. Right. Yeah.
yeah. Anyways,
So I just had a couple of potential clues to whether or not you're clairvoyant dominant, right? Because again, this is not a skill set for me. If I get a visual, it is very, very rare. So people say, well, can you tell me what my loved one looks like? Yeah, probably not. And
sorry.
unless I hear it or just kind of get a feel for it, it's like,
Yeah,
no, because I just don't get the visual. Some people do, and that's a great benefit, right? Because it's like, if I can describe what your loved one looks like, what a
yeah,
wonderful detail piece of
yeah.
evidence that you're giving someone.
I know that's actually, it has been really cool that way for me, where I will see a person's face like really clearly. I'll
Yeah.
be able to describe what they look like.
Mhm.
Um, but I'll be like, oh yeah, I can see and describe this person. Is this, you know, your grandmother, whatever? Oh yeah, that's, you just totally described her. Okay, perfect. At least you know you're on the right track. But yeah, it's really weird. But the more detail that you get, the better. So, you know, go with that for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So again, just potential clues that I want to give people to figure out if they're clairvoyant dominants. And pardon me, but I have notes because I don't want to forget to mention anything. So first of all, you think in pictures. Sarah gave a great example of how you see things visually, either unfolding or static. You love colors, drawing, painting, or visual art forms, right? It's like, oh, I just love to draw. You are a very visually driven person. You may be highly stimulated and affected by what you see around you, both good and bad. For example, you love nature, you love beauty. You can love to be in it, but that's more of a feeling. But do you really connect with what you're seeing? Do pictures really stimulate you in a positive way and also in a negative way? And again, I think we want to be careful, but those can just be some things to look out for. You relive your fond memories and past events through visual images, right? I don't. I relive them through thoughts. I don't reimagine them visually.
really?
Oh yeah, I don't see them. I don't see past events at all in any terms of visual. To me, it's all about what the conversation and the feeling was.
That's so off. I am like, no, I see that person. Like,
Right.
I'm like,
which is exactly why I'm saying these are things you need to look for. That is not how I look at past memories. It is all about, it's all about the words and the feelings. I don't visualize any of it. Now, that's not to say that I can't have those moments, but they're very, very rare. Here's another trick. When you describe things to others, you try to paint a picture for them rather than giving them words, right? So,
well, I'm usually describing the picture that I saw, so I guess that counts.
It's, you know how you're trying to tell somebody, I went to the grocery store today and there was this guy and he was driving this blue car and I swear it was a Corvette and it was so hot and he parked right underneath this tree. And so I'm giving you the visuals, right? He got out of his car and he was wearing these really weird clothes and he had this raggedy blue shirt on and he had this cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And then as he got out, he looked at me and he said, I don't know what the heck you're doing here. And you park like an idiot. Well, then I looked at him and then he threw his cigarette away. Do you see how I'm painting a picture with visuals?
And I see the whole thing when you describe
it. Right? I would never tell you a story like that. I'm not creating a picture for you because I don't care about the picture. I'm going to tell you what happened because I'm a word person.
Right.
I'm a clairaudient person.
But with your words, you can.
But I would never tell you the color of your car. I would never describe the guy. I would not. Those are visual descriptors.
Yeah.
I'm giving you visual descriptors. So I want people who feel like they might be clairvoyant. Listen to yourself when you're telling somebody a story. Did you paint a picture for them?
Right.
Or did you just tell them what happened?
Right.
It's just an indicator. I'm not saying that these are blanket things. They're just things to look at.
Right.
Whether or not so catch yourself. I want to see if you notice next time you're, I know when you and I talk, we talk mostly in words. You don't paint a lot of pictures, but just see if you notice any correlation between that. Because some people are very visual when they talk. They want to tell me the entire story until I've got the visual. I don't care about the visual, but they do.
Right.
You may be clairvoyant. So that's why I put that in there. So you may also be very observant and see things in the environment that other people don't see, right? Because you're a visual person. Oh, did you see that? This or this or this or this or this? If you're extremely visual and always seeing everything, looking at other people, and you're a visual person. Another clue that clairvoyance may be dominant for you. Okay.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. And then, so the last thing was just for those with clairvoyant dominance, their psi information mainly speaks to them in pictures or begins with images and then branches out from there. And so that's kind of summarizes what we've talked about.
Right. Kind of like when I say, you get the picture and then you couple it with, maybe some words, the feelings, etc. Now,
the couple other things I was going to add here too is, for me, visuals are very quick. It's almost like the camera shutter opens and then closes. I mean, it's just like that.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the dream state visuals, which tend to stay with us and morph.
Right.
But for me, clairvoyance has been, it'd be kind of like me showing you this. That's it.
Right.
In my brain, right?
Right. Now, it's like a flash.
Okay, so are those movies flashes for you, or do they stay with you, or do you have to stay with them and then they start to move?
See, and I wonder if that's why in the dream state, why I'm trying to say that this kind of correlates, because it's like, or maybe this is just how I figured it out, is like when you see the pictures in the dream state, and then let's say, you're like reliving that dream or you're revisiting it and you re-see all those visuals, it's like you're re-getting all that information, and that's like practicing your clairvoyant muscle.
You're going back to it. That's all you're doing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, when I'm getting, let's just say, psychic information from a sitter, sometimes it does only come in like a flash.
Yeah.
And then it's gone, or some kind of a symbol. But then there will be other times where I see maybe a scene in time and I'll be like, oh, I'm seeing you in a field, with flowers, and you're running around and it looks like you live on a farm. And so I will be describing like a scenario visual.
Right.
And it did kind of play out like a movie. So it depends though. And
which doesn't help people, but
well, because, okay, I guess, and it depends on the questions that you're asking. So it's like,
but both are true. Both are true.
Right. So if you're just asking for a simple question and then you get like a flash image of, let's say, a computer or whatever, what that means to you, you need to symbolizely, break it down as to what that answer is. So I guess
it seems like it varies, and that's okay. It
does.
That's
and I don't think
answer. I just couldn't answer it because it doesn't generally happen for me in that format. So,
well, I just think that it can be a variety of the things, and that's why we mentioned it, because it's like it could be a color, it could be just a symbolic type of symbol,
but overall they tend to be pretty fleeting, and I think that was the point. Even when we see an aura, it's generally not sustained. Even if we see an apparition, it's generally not sustained. It's a very short-lived type of experience. If it's an internal image, it will generally be very quick. I call it like the shutter going off in a camera. That's how fast it can be.
Right. Well, so except for the aura thing, though, like I don't know, I can't help it when I see it or I don't see it.
Mm-hmm. So I understand that.
It either happens or it doesn't, right. Or unless I try. But then,
but the same is true with internal images. That's the whole point. Is they're coming in and they're going. That's another trigger to understand is that it's not coming from you, because it's very out of your train of thought. Even if you think in terms of pictures, you're probably having a train of thought about something. And then this very counter visual comes in, which is completely not your train of thought. And that's where the signal is. It's like, wow, why did I see that? I was over here thinking about this. And then all of a sudden, I'm over here thinking about my kids and family and what's going on over here. And all of a sudden I see a picture of a train. Why'd I see that for? That's when you need to stop and go, wow, that visual stood out. It's a little different from this thought process I was on over here. What does that mean? It may be psychic information that's designed for you, right?
Right.
Clue.
Like when we were talking about the symbology with your guides, because you can make a whole list of things that, this means whatever to me. And then when you see that sign, you know what that means to you.
Exactly. So that train or whatever that symbol means to you could be relevant to what you're thinking about over here. That's a psychic hit to help you with whatever this situation is. So paying attention to those little flashes. And I think that this is true for every clair, though, is that those things will pop in very unusually out of your normal whatever's going on.
Yes, and correlated, because like I said, I don't think that you just get the pictures and then that's it. 9 times out of 10 or more, it's like you're getting the picture, you're getting the feeling, you might even get a sense of smell. I don't know, it depends on what it is. So it's usually coupled with these things, and that's why it's important to recognize.
But that's why you have to stop.
Mm-hmm. And you have to say, oh, well, it wasn't just the picture that I got the picture, I got the emotional, and maybe even some other additional information. And so when you put all those together, you're like, oh, now I have a bigger picture, I'm getting more and more information on it.
Right. So true.
I think that's important to recognize. It's not just a random flash imagery. Maybe just don't always discount those.
Right. That's the point, though. It's like, because if you bulldoze over that picture, which is your dominant, right? If clairvoyance is your dominant, you're going to see the picture first, right?
Right.
If you bulldoze over that, you just missed the psychic information that was underneath the surface.
Right.
Because the dominant came through as a visual for you. Let's call it the train or the rose or the teddy bear or the rattle, right? Whatever that was, you blew it off. You didn't hang on to it, because down here underneath the visual, that's where all the feeling and the emotion and the awareness was that you're talking about. That's that unpacking.
Right. And it helps, I want to say, the people on the other side that want to come and give messages, if they know you have like a certain list of things that they can kind of choose through, that say, oh, I'm a military person, this is my military sign. Or, this is how I died. This is what I did for a living. This is how old I am, et cetera, et cetera. Those can really help your mediumship skills, because you are essentially, you're working together to,
That's assigning that symbology, if that's
right.
something
And I think that's mainly why it works, because it's a way to pack in information in a symbol that's both for you and the sitter.
Mm-hmm.
And then it is coupled with other things. But like you said, if you just dismiss it, you just missed the whole show.
Right. And you missed all the psychic information that was underneath. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the point about recognizing if clairvoyance is dominant for you. Just stop or go, why did I see that? Bring the visual back and sit with for a minute.
Right.
Does it resonate with you, someone else? What does it feel like? Unpack that, bring the visual back, because it's going to happen just like that. And you're going to mull over it, right? You're just going to run right over it. And then you've missed, and you're going, why am I not psychic? You probably are. You're just running it over. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Just a couple of last things, and then we'll be done with clairvoyance as far as I was concerned. Another thing when we were talking about assigning symbology is I think it's also to notice colors more, because a lot of people are very color sensitive. You can also ask yourself what colors mean.
Yes,
it's like
I had to do that with auras, because I was like, I don't know why I'm seeing this color. I don't know what it means. So I had to literally like go through and
right. And I would also say, just be careful that you're not taking one person's interpretation of a color as your own, unless you want to assign it that meaning.
Right.
Because when Sarah sees green, it may mean one thing to her, but when I see green, it may mean something different to me. If I take a class with Sarah and Sarah tells me that green means this, I see green and then I think it means that.
Right.
I think we want to be careful. It's okay if you want to assign green to meaning that. I would tend to encourage people to ask, what does green mean to you? That's more important, because then I may be giving it a meaning that belongs to Sarah, not to me and my psychic self. So, I associate green with the chakras and what they mean to me, because that's the way I learned it. But other people use those other colors in a different way. So find what works for you. But if you're very visual oriented and colors mean something, I would also say just develop a color chart. I did that once before. Develop a color chart and say, how do you feel when you see this color? What does brown make you feel? Like brown for me is like, there's some disease or some discomfort going on there. To me, it's a very illness related color. So, if I see brown, it kind of gives me that muddy, murky feeling. That's what it means to me, but it may mean something completely different to you. So I also just kind of encourage people to kind of look at colors a little bit there. And you can do the same thing with any object. Honestly, we were talking about a rose earlier. Sit down and just meditate on a rose.
Right.
What does it immediately make you feel? That's how you can work with your team in spirit, because they may give the meaning to you. So pick those types of things and just work with them in your meditation. And I think that people will find that they'll start coming up more for you around you, because now you're more aware of it. Oh, I just meditated on a rose yesterday. Right. So it's like, and now I'm seeing a rose for this person. Well, in my meditation, they told me that it meant I'm in love or I'm getting ready to get married. And I was seeing this person and she's getting married.
Right. Boom. So no, that will happen. That will happen more than you think, where, like, let's say you finally decide, oh, I'm going to pick this symbol to mean this. And then your guides will literally like put it in play, and you'll have like a running, theme of, oh, this is, they'll implement it into your readings so that you can practice using it.
Yep.
So yeah, no, that's a really good point. It's a really good point.
Oh, and the last thing that I'll say about clairvoyance, and you brought this up really in the very beginning, so I think it's a good bring around. I encourage people to daydream visually, right? Yes. And I know that this is something that you do. You talk about visualizations all the time. Visualizations are extremely difficult for me, which is probably why I have even a harder time sometimes with visualizing certain aspects to do my own energy work, because there's so much visualization that is suggested. But if you're a clairvoyant person or you want to work with it, work with your visuals, do intentional daydreaming. You said what? Put yourself at the beach, see what happens, see what shows up. I mean, what daydreaming visualizations, because you do that. What suggestions do you have?
Well, I would just say meditation, for one thing, is a way to expand that muscle, right? Like, like I was talking about when you go to the beach and.
But I mean, make it a visual, not just meditate with silence. You're creating a daydream in your brain. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
Make it
right.
happen. Go to the park, go to the beach. When you go to the beach, what happens? Does somebody walk up and talk to you? Do you see dolphins? Is there a boat? Is there a sunset? Is there a sunrise? That's what I mean by getting into that daydream. Let the picture emerge. That's what I was kind of talking about.
Right. I think that kind of it should happen naturally in some ways if it's actually psychic information. So, it might hit you in a unexpected kind of way.
But what I'm talking about with this question is I'm trying to give people an example of how they can work with their clairvoyance. So one way to work with your clairvoyance is by intentionally creating visuals in your mind. So that's what I mean by intentionally sitting down and imagining yourself at the beach. What color is the sand? What's in the water? What do you see? Is it daytime? Is it nighttime? You're creating visuals. You're using that visual muscle by creating an actual picture.
So let me ask you this question. Do you ever like think about a movie that's like your favorite movie and you just see the movie happen?
No, not really. No,
okay, well, that's a good practice point then. So literally play the movie in your mind. Like, how does it start?
Great example.
What happens?
You're stretching that clairvoyance. You're forcing yourself to see it, not hear it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is the other thing you could probably do though, because you could probably add the music. I've literally seen The Little Mermaid so many times. I can hear it and see it from start to finish. And I think maybe that's why, I don't know, but so
they're just ways to stretch the clairvoyant muscle, which is what we're talking about.
I think having those visualizations are important. And when we talk about the law of attraction and manifestation, for example, if you can't see yourself doing said job, like literally seeing yourself at this job.
Which is why I struggle with those things, because I'm not visual. I have to work really hard to create visuals in my mind, which is why if you want to be more clairvoyant, focusing on creating, and that's why I use the example of daydreaming. I think you've brought a great examples by saying doing the movie, but I was just saying imagine. Create a scenario in your mind.
It's the same thing though, because you're reimagining the movie happen in your mind, right?
Yeah.
And so that's essentially this.
It's just muscle. Another way to practice that. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's probably why I'm so dang good at it, because I've been just like.
So thanks everybody for joining us today. Did you have anything else about clairvoyance? I guess I think we kind of summed it up. Probably made it longer than you wanted to, but we wanted to bring in these different perspectives, talks about the positives, the negatives, what they look like, how you can possibly work with them, and just to identify them. If you're clairvoyant dominant, pay attention, stop when you have those visuals, see what they mean to you. There's probably some extra there. If clairvoyance isn't a strong suit for you, that's okay. Focus on the one that is your strong suit. If you already are kind of a practitioner and you want to build on your clairvoyance, then you're probably going to have to work at it like I do. But honestly, I do okay without it. So I really don't even worry about it. So, all right. Does that finish it for you?
Yeah, no, I think we covered everything I wanted to hit. So
awesome. All right. Well, thanks guys for joining us and sticking here with us. Next time we're going to be talking about clairaudience, which will be my predominant one. Although I think we're probably both more clairsentient dominant than we realize. But next week we'll talk about clairaudience. I hope you can join us for that one. So thanks everybody. Right. See you next time. Bye-bye.